Welcome to another Readaloud with Miss Disney. I am your lovely host, Miss Disney. And I know you guys have waited long enough because I've been so focused on the Disney villain series written by Serena Valentino. But I promise you, I am going to take a short break from that series because we're almost up to date with that. And this July, the newest book will be coming out. So I'm kind of taking a slight break on that and coming back to a series that I kind of started with a little while ago, and I promised my fans that I would be coming back to this. So we're coming back to the Twisted Tales, and we are going to start off with Cruel Truth. What if Anita and Cruella were best friends? Sounds interesting. Shall we see what happens? And if you like any of my videos, whether it's Disney reading along content, Disney information, or just like seeing me, click on the link below and you'll be able to become a member of my video. I promise it will be worth your while. So let's go ahead and get started. We're entering the 101 Dalmatians world. Chapter 1. Anita. December 1958. Anita had to admit 101 Dalmatians were a lot. When they arrived, their barking was loud enough to wake half of London. She knew the sound of that many puppies howling during the late evening hours should mortify her. But for once, Anita wasn't thinking about decorum. Her and Roger's darling Perdita and Pongo were home. The dogs had miraculously found their way back to them, with their 15 dog-napped puppies and an additional 84 puppies as well. Yes, that's right. 84 extra puppies. 84. There were now 101 Dalmatians in their tiny home. The number made her head spin. Anita leaned against the wall and rubbed her temple. She, Roger, and Nanny, their longtime housekeeper, had counted the puppies 3 times. Even as they wiggled and squirmed, their tiny tails swinging, knocking into all sorts of things, and muddying the furniture and rugs with their soot-covered paws. For some strange reason, the dogs arrived covered in soot, which made them all look like Labrador retrievers. But who cared about dirt when they'd been blessed with such good fortune? Anita could think of no better holiday present. Thoughts of tree trimming were forgotten. "Pongo boy, Pongo!" Roger kept saying as he danced around with his best friend's paws in his hands, the two staring at each other with such adoration it brought a tear to Anita's eye. "This is cause for celebration," Roger declared. He then went straight to his piano to brainstorm a new song based on his declaration that they were indeed keeping all 101 Dalmatians. And to do so, they'd be moving to the country immediately, where they'd buy a hound compound of sorts. Pongo, Perdita, and the puppies seemed delighted by this idea as well, howling along as Roger came up with the words, which somehow even Anita and Nanny found themselves singing along to. Roger truly had a knack for catchy lyrics. Secretly, Anita still felt a bit bad about the ditty that had inspired Roger's first big hit. It was a song titled Stella De Vil. Roger had based the lyrics on encounters with their old school chum, Stella De Vil. Anita had been certain they'd be sued for libel or defamation of character when the song was released. But in a move that was classic Stella, their old friend had embraced the nickname Roger had given her. "I heard the song, darling, and it's a hoot," she told Anita when she'd called a few weeks ago after hearing the tune. While she and Stella didn't speak often, not since that unfortunate incident in school, Anita tried to keep in touch with her friend. Sometimes Stella called her back. Sometimes she didn't. "I'm touched to be on Roger's mind this many years later," Stella said with a hearty laugh, "and I'm not bothered by the nickname at all. Did I tell you I actually go by Cruella now? It's true. My entire staff calls me that. I'm ruthless, as you know." Stella had gone on to say the song boosted House of De Vil sales around London as well. I hope Roger signed a good contract for that song. If he did, your Sir Galahad can finally afford to buy you a proper home, Stella said, chortling some more before hanging up. Anita was relieved. Stella could have been livid about the song. They'd already crossed her when Roger had accused Stella of dog-napping the puppies. But after a thorough investigation by Scotland Yard, she'd been cleared of all charges. Anita was certain Roger was just letting old grudges against the Deville family influence his decisions. Stella had been nothing but sympathetic about the puppy's disappearance, which was unusual as Stella hated animals of any kind. In their youth, Stella wasn't nearly this calm when accusations had been leveled against the House of De Vil and her father. Anita shuddered to think of the last time Stella and she had been mixed up in a situation involving bobbies. Her hair instantly went to her neck as she remembered the circumstances. A loud rap at the door pulled Anita from her memories. All singing and howling momentarily stopped as Roger went to answer it. Anita and Nanny glanced at each other before peering around the corner, catching sight of a bobby in uniform. Anita wiped a sooty paw print off her apron as she strained to hear what the two were saying. Something about a noise complaint. No surprise there. It is loud in here, isn't it? Marvelously loud, Roger said pleasantly over the sound of all the barking. We're celebrating. Our dogs found their way home, and look, they found 84 new puppies that they brought with them as well. The bobby looked bewildered. Yes, well, please try to keep it down. It is after 10 o'clock p.m., you know. Yes, of course, Roger said absent-mindedly. Would you like a biscuit before you go? The bobby waved him off. Very well. Have a good night, officer. We'll do our best to keep the noise down. Roger shut the door and went straight back to the piano to continue tinkering with his new song idea. Pongo was right by his side, standing watch, listening. Anita, darling, Roger called. What do you think of this? He hummed to himself as he played a few bars. Catchy? Very, Anita agreed, knowing full well her husband would keep tinkering with those very same notes over and over till they were what he considered perfect. Anita felt a nudge and looked down. Purdy, as Anita affectionately called her beautiful girl, was trying to get her attention. You're right, Purdy, Anita surmised. We should probably get everyone cleaned up and settled down for the evening, shouldn't we? She said, talking to Purdy as if she were human, which was something she did often. She only did it at home, mind you, and didn't care if people thought she was peculiar. Anita felt like Purdy understood her, and she understood Purdy. And what her dog wanted now was to clean off the pups and get them all to bed. Anita understood. Her own apron and skirt were covered in soot, and she knew she had some of her face as well. But for once, appearance wasn't important. Stella would hate to hear her say that. She had pressing concerns. How were they going to bathe all these puppies? And where were they going to sleep tonight? They really were going to have to look into this hound compound idea rather quickly. Several puppies were clamoring for both Purdy and Anita now. Anita picked up the closest Dalmatian puppy. He was half black, half white, having his rear end brushed with a feather duster by Nanny. How do you feel about a bath? Anita cooed, nuzzling him. I'll take the dear little ones and get started, Nanny said, plucking the puppy from Anita's arms. Nanny's black and white uniform and cap were covered in soot from head to toe, as was her gray hair, pulled off her face in a bun. Not that Nanny minded. She'd cried harder than any of them when the puppies had been stolen under her watch. But as Anita reminded her, how was Nanny to know the two men posing as electric company employees were secretly dog nappers? It was the men's descriptions that haunted Anita. Nanny had told a bobby that there were two. One tall and wiry, the other short and squat, both with dark hair and regional British accents. Their descriptions reminded Anita of two lads she'd crossed paths with more than 5 years ago when she became friendly with Stella. They couldn't be the same fellows, could they? Anita pursed her lips, wondering and worrying about things she didn't have answers to. Why had someone stolen the puppies in the first place? And where had all these other dogs come from? It wasn't like she could ask Pongo and Perdita, but still, she couldn't help worrying. Were the dogs safe now that they were home? Or would whoever stole them the first time come back and try again? Roger's humming and piano playing grew louder, and Pongo barked along with the melody. Anita sighed. These were questions she could deal with tomorrow. Tonight, she should allow herself to celebrate like her husband was doing. Her imagination could be so overactive sometimes. This is why she and Roger worked so well together. They were both creative types. He with his music, she with her writing and sketching. She'd been writing stories about her childhood dog, Madeline, and now Purdy for years, working on the stories at night or on weekends while Roger was on the piano. She'd never shown them to the publishing house where she worked. Everything they seemed to publish was by men, so she was biding her time, trying to figure out how to break in. She knew if she spoke to Stella about this, her old friend would insist Anita make her writing known and walk in and demand they publish her book. Or Stella would do it for her. Anita smiled to herself. The new year, 1959, was less than a month away. She would make a promise to herself here and now to get her stories published. This would be their year. She was 21 and a young married woman with a family of her own, if one counted Roger, the puppies, Pongo, Purdy, and Nanny, which she did. She would do things differently than she'd been done in her own home growing up. The 1960s were around the corner, and she could be anything she wanted to be. Hadn't Stella taught her that? And look at her, with a career in fashion. Their paths have been different. Anita had gone on to university like she'd always dreamt, and Stella had gone straight to work with her father at the family's fashion house, which was thriving. It was time for Anita to take control of her own career. She would finish that book. She pursed her lips. Now that Purdy was home with all these puppies, she certainly had enough inspiration. And on a hound compound in the country, yes. That background would do nicely. Once the puppies are bathed, we can find some blankets for them to sleep on, Nanny was saying, looking around the room at all the wriggling canines. There were so many they couldn't even see the floor. We'll cover the furniture, and I'll clean the upholstery tomorrow. I'll help you, Anita said, scooping up 2 puppies from the floor as Purdy eagerly followed along. Roger, the oblivious darling, continued to play his piano. Thankfully, between her and Nanny, they had all the puppies cleaned by midnight, and Purdy and Pongo were surprisingly adept at corralling 99 puppies into one room to get some sleep. It almost seemed as if they were used to handling so many puppies at once. What a ridiculous thought! But still. Roger, dear, Anita called to her husband, who was still scribbling notes on a piece of sheet music at the piano. We should get to bed, don't you think? Yes, you're right, he said, his blonde hair mussed as he ran a hand through it and continued to stare at the music. She knew he had no clue what she'd just said. When the man got an idea in his head, he could focus on nothing else. They'd only been married in a short while, but they knew each other's patterns and rhythms pretty well already. His passion was one of the things she loved most about him, even if she'd initially despised it. Raj, the music will be there in the morning, she tried again, her voice light and airy. Pongo nudged his owner as if he understood what Anita was saying. Nanny stood beside Anita and yawned, her whole body starting to sway from exhaustion. You go on ahead, Nanny, Anita encouraged the older woman she loved like a mother. I'll shut off the lights. Tomorrow will be a long day, I suspect, she added, looking around at the dozens of puppies scattered on the settees and chairs and nestled together on the area rugged by the fireplace. How would they manage? Good night, dear little ones, Nanny whispered, staring lovingly at them. Sleep well. Anita moved to the front door, making sure it was locked. a habit she had gotten into since the puppy's disappearance. Then walked over to her husband and put her arms around him, leaning her head in close to help break his work trance. Roger, dear, really, we must go to bed. The puppies will be up before we know it. Roger removed his hands from the piano keys and placed them on top of Anita's. You're right, darling. I'm sorry. Let's go to bed. We have a lot to do tomorrow. He let go, closed the piano, and quietly stood up, patting Pongo's head. Before their disappearance, Pongo and Perdita usually had slept by the foot of the bed with their 15 puppies, but now it went without saying that they'd want to stay downstairs and keep an eye on their expanded brood. Anita kissed the top of Purdy's head. Next to their mother, she spied Rolly and Patch, and it made her heart soar. Their puppies, their precious puppies, were home. Roger reached for her hand and led her upstairs. Tomorrow is going to be a big day, Roger said with a yawn, his nose wrinkling. We have so much to do. I think we should put the house up immediately, don't you? He didn't give her a chance to respond. Maybe we should take a drive to the country tomorrow, explore properties. We need a large estate where there will be room for the puppies to roam, and we won't have to worry about noise complaints. Anita's thoughts flashed to Hell Hall. She brushed them aside. A drive to the country sounds lovely. I suspect Reynolds News will want to do a follow-up on the puppy's return, which could be good. Roger snapped his fingers. The dogs will be famous. Who knows? Maybe Canine Crunchies will want to give us a lifetime supply of dog food. That would be helpful, don't you think? Roger let go of her hand and reached for the light switch upstairs. She loved when he got animated like this. Very helpful. Anita paused on the top step and looked down at the puppies and Pongo and Perdita, nestling close together on the floor. Do you think it's safe to leave them here with Nanny for the afternoon while we go on a drive? Yes, my darling. No one would think to steal this many puppies, he said with a chuckle. He paused, his mind working through a thought. Although I suppose we should call Scotland Yard and make sure the other puppies weren't dog-napped. I would hate to think there are other couples out there searching for their pups. That's a good idea, Rog. I'll call first thing. And Roger was right about the drive to the country. They couldn't worry every time they left the house now, could they? If no one has reported the pups missing, we will keep them all, Roger declared as they tiptoed to the bedroom since the floor had a tendency to creak. I think Pongo and Purdy would like that, Anita agreed, walking into the room and removing the pillow shams from their bed. Strange how they found those pups, don't you think? Wherever could they have gotten them all? Roger gave her a look. If I had to guess, I'd say Stella had something to do with all this. Rog, Anita scolded, that's a terrible thing to say. Scotland Yard questioned her. They said she had nothing to do with the puppy's disappearance, and you know it. He shuffled into the bedroom and pulled a pair of striped pajamas out of a dresser drawer. Then he turned and headed down the hallway to the bathroom. I don't care what Scotland Yard has to say. Stella was too interested in our puppy's arrival. When was the last time she cared about anything going on in this household? Anita paused. He had her there. She could still hear his voice echo down the hallway. If you ask me, where Corella goes, problems follow. Roger, please stop calling her Corella, Anita said with a weary sigh. I've always thought it was a rotten nickname and entirely beneath you. She heard him muttering something less than polite as he came back down the hallway. By the time he returned, she'd already gotten into bed and was trying to banish thoughts of her fair-weathered friend to the side. Roger got in beside her, his feet ice-cold as they brushed against her own. He leaned over and kissed her warmly. I'm sorry, my love. I don't mean to be so awful, but you know how she gets to me. Corella always has, ever since we were children. Stella was the rare topic on which they'd never agreed, and Roger had known her way longer than Anita had. I know, although I do find it funny how you can't say her actual name anymore now that you've used her nickname in a song, she said lightly. She gets on my last nerve, always has. She's a devil woman, he said, his voice rising. Anita thought she heard a puppy yelp downstairs. "Roger, please," she begged. "You'll wake the puppies." "She just gets me so upset," he continued, his brown eyes darkening as he pulled the covers up under his chin and glowered. "She can't be trusted. You know that. I know that, especially after what happened when we were school chums." "It was a misunderstanding," Anita said, which is what she always said. They'd often discussed what happened when they were all at the Highbrook school together 5 years ago, and they both had different theories. Roger's always involved blaming Stella. Anita wanted to blame Stella's company. The thought of that Stella could have been behind what happened hurt too much for her to consider. Roger harrumphed. "I still don't understand how you were ever friends with her." Anita smiled to herself as an image popped up of her and Stella in a large walk-in wardrobe, dresses littered at their feet. Stella pulling Anita up onto the ottoman and making her spin around. "Be confident, Anita. No one likes a wet noodle. Act like you're a force to be reckoned with, and people will treat you like one." She was a different person back then. We both were. She leaned into her darling husband and let her nose brush his. "You were too," she said lightly. He laughed, but despite himself. "I was a bit of a pill, wasn't I?" Anita started to chuckle. "You were insufferable," she said, laughing harder. "I couldn't stand you." They were both laughing so hard they could hardly speak. After a moment, Roger replied, "Lovely, but understood. I recall you telling me that once or twice. I wasn't that fond of you either, you know." Anita gave him a playful swat on the shoulder. "At least I pretended not to be. You know, as lads, we don't know what to say around a beautiful young lady. I was an insufferable bore who was a tad competitive just so I could get your attention." Anita gave him a look and stopped laughing. "You were competitive, but you were never a bore." He smiled at her. "And you were not annoying, Anita, even if I called you that once or twice." She leaned into him, and Roger put his arms around her in bed. "We were terrible to each other back then, weren't we?" she said softly. "I blame Cruella," he teased, but she knew he wasn't joking. "I don't," she said, her finger trailing the pocket on his pajama top. "I'm thankful she came into my life, truly." Anita looked up at her husband. "I'm not sure who I'd be if I hadn't met Stella. I was a shy wallflower, and she helped me break out of my shell." Roger brushed a strand of her hair away from her eyes. "You always did see her through rose-colored glasses. I see Cruella for who she really is." "Do you? Does anyone?" Anita wanted to ask. The Stella she knew wore many masks. Rarely did anyone see the real person who was underneath. Anita, however, suspected she had come close for a brief period. Thoughts of their time at the Highbrook school, working at the Hampton House for Dogs and Cats shelter. A very different Roger and an entirely different Stella danced in her mind. "I'm just saying, there is more to Stella than meets the eye." Roger kissed her again, then turned off the lamp beside him. "If you say so, but in my experience, when it comes to Cruella," he said, using her nickname deliberately, "things are always as they appear." Anita turned off the light on her side of the bed and snuggled in next to her husband. Roger was already starting to snore when she whispered to the darkness, "That's where you're wrong, my dear. Nothing is ever what it appears when it comes to Stella De Vil."